So let's talk about Douglas Murray. So Douglas Murray, who I love, by the way, or I maybe used to love, I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of his anymore. But anyway, so this Douglas Murray and Dave Smith debate on Rogan, I've been waiting to talk about it for a while, and I think it's actually appropriate for given the subject matter we're talking about today. Because I believe, and Dave Smith went on his podcast after he did this debate and said it's going to be the biggest thing that he ever does. And I like Dave Smith personally, just like I like Douglas Murray. And I don't want it to be the biggest thing that Dave does. I want Dave to do well. But I do think that this is going to be what Dave Smith is going to be remembered for at the end of the day. Not only will I think it probably is going to be the defining thing for both Douglas Murray and Dave Smith, sad to say, not so Rogan, but for the two of those guys, I think it's definitely going to be the thing they're remembered for the most. I believe, and if you haven't watched the debate, I would highly recommend going back and watching it, even if you don't have an opinion on Israel or Gaza or foreign policy or whatever you want to talk about. I believe not only will this go down as the most defining debate of their careers, respectively, I think this is going to go down as the defining debate of the end of the elite era in our culture, of the nerd era in our culture. And it came from an unusually ironic place. And because you have to understand this, because before Douglas Murray kind of got caught up in the whole Israel fanatic phase, and there are people that are fanatic for Gaza as well. I'm not really a big fan of those folks. I'm not a fan of fanatics generally. But actually, that's not true. But in this situation, I just think everything involved is so terrible that I just think anyone cheerleading either side of it, really the radical, like the Rachel Zegler people, who I love, by the way, is the most entitled, the most American person in America right now is Rachel Zegler. We'll talk about her maybe in another episode. But who I actually like, by the way. She was great in West Side Story. But Murray has been long thought by many, myself included, to be a phenomenal cultural critic. I think Douglas Murray has been one of the people who has most shaped my line of thinking about a lot of issues, including as a defender of values and a defender of common sense. But he was exposed in this debate with Dave Smith, and we're going to get into why in a second. But he was exposed when a true person of that breed and of his caliber, which is Dave Smith, debated him on the show. Because Douglas Murray, even though he has he's like the smart British guy, right? That's kind of what he's known for. He's kind of like Christopher Hitchens in that way. And Dave Smith is kind of like a bare knuckle brawler, like a Brooklyn. I think he's from Brooklyn. He's definitely from New York, but a New York guy who just puts on brass knuckles and just beats the tar out of people. Like he did it with Chris Cuomo. He's done it with so many other people. And Dave just doesn't give a shit about who Douglas Murray is or anybody else. He has his opinions and his convictions and a lot of facts on his side, and he just goes after people. And so that's essentially what happened, was that Douglas tried to be, again, like the smart British guy, whatever, and then just every chance he got, just Dave Smith just threw him through a wall the entire time, or dunked his head in the toilet, to use the nerd analogy, whatever. And so many people have pointed out multiple things about this debate. There are so many sound bites that have gone viral from this, but the obvious one, which is where Rogan and then who is the other one? Rogan, Tim Dillon did it, and then Tucker Carlson, when Dave Smith went on Tucker's podcast, talked about this, but it's the "you haven't been here" point. You have never been to Israel. You've never been to Gaza. All those things. Jason Whitlock did this as well. You've never been there. Let's say bean, green beans. You've never been to Israel. You've never been to Gaza. And the Gaza, the whole lengthening out of the vowels thing. And so people point to that as the point where the debate went off the rails, and where Douglas Murray kind of just descended into kind of clownery, lampoonery, whatever you want to call it. And that's a fair point. That's a very, very fair point, which I think it's very, very valid of criticism from that sense. However, I believe the most defining moment of the debate was not that moment. It was really two things. It was the first part of the debate, and I think something at the very end of the debate. And I want to talk about the first part first. So the most defining part of the debate, I think the one that framed the rest of us and that gets into the "you haven't been here before" point, and then the later point I'm going to talk about, is the first part of it. And so, again, for those who haven't seen it, Rogan kind of opens up, and he's like, look, I really respect you guys a lot. He's had Douglas Murray on the show 3 times before this. He's had Dave a bunch, because they're all friends. I don't know if Douglas is really friends with Rogan now, but who knows? But he's basically like, look, I respect both of you guys a lot. I think you guys are both very smart people, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. And Dave is like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, whatever. And then Douglas just goes and just really lays into both Rogan and Dave Smith, and kind of just lectured them on saying you haven't had really a balanced side of this debate on everything. And a balanced side, quote unquote, meaning i.e. one that defended the pro-Israel take. And he kind of just really just unloaded on the two of them from the jump. Like, he attacked the moderator, which you're never supposed to do, because Rogan has an opinion, but Rogan wanted to moderate this discussion between Dave Smith and Douglas Murray, because I think people were kind of sick of the people pot-shotting each other without an actual dialogue on a major platform, which is what I think that Rogan wanted to do. And so, again, this is kind of where everything turned hostile in that way. And then, so he goes out on offense, and he spends like the first 10 minutes just making himself sound like the most unlikable, the most like, again, not, like condescending. Like, it was a awful, awful look for Douglas Murray to just lecture Joe Rogan, lecture Dave Smith on how like they don't, I don't even know, he like sounded, I don't even like, I'm not annoyed to even have this discussion. And then he threw out like, Daryl Cooper, who is a historian, who is kind of he's not like a classically trained historian, quote unquote. I should say that, because maybe Douglas Murray will watch this and he's like, oh, he's not a historian, whatever. And then, so they go through the debate. There's the, you haven't been here. There's the whole punching jelly argument. Like, you're not an expert, whatever. And so this I thought was the most revealing point. And so Dave Smith, I forget, I'm paraphrasing, so for someone correct me if I'm getting the exact quote wrong. But Dave used the word slaughter to describe, Israel is dropping bombs on Gaza and slaughtering children or something like that. And then as soon as Dave used the word slaughter, Douglas Murray perked up and he took exception to that. And then so he's like, well, they're not slaughtering the children of Gaza. And Dave is like, okay, well, what would you, like, it's like, okay, fine, they're killing people. It's like, what would you even say then? He's like, well, they're just casualties in a war. And so I'm like, okay, that's a bit bizarre. And that's not a valid point at all. So slaughter, kill, murder, annihilate, whatever you want to use. It's the same thing. Dave Smith was saying that Israel is dropping bombs on Gaza and killing children, which is happening. There's video on it. There's evidence across the world that is happening, across any platform you want. Just look it up. And I've seen way too many videos than I would care to see on that. I'm sure a lot of you have as well. And so Douglas had no valid point to replace that word with anything logical, which is very, very telling, because if he used the same debate or the same language, on the other side of the debate, it would not undermine his argument. He would have the same zealousness that Dave Smith had on his side of the argument. And so, again, it's this kind of condescending, I'm smarter than you, so shut up, you can't have an opinion type of thing. It's ridiculous. And so, there was a ton of fallout after this debate. There were a lot of people who thought that, including myself, that Dave Smith kind of crushed Douglas Murray, and I thought Douglas had some fine points to raise, but he just came off like such a jerk, and he came off like such an asshole that I couldn't find a lane to defend him in. I just couldn't do it. And so what I think that a lot of people saw, and I think the person that I went to afterwards was Jason Whitlock. So Jason Whitlock did a podcast in the aftermath of the Murray-Smith debate as kind of a post-mortem. And I thought the Jason Whitlock podcast, which everyone should go listen to, he talked about Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, all these people, and tied it all together. And so I thought that it was the most accurate distilling of what actually happened during the debate. And so what Jason said was that he stated that Murray's condescension and elitism, both of which are debased from Christianity, which is the whole point of his show, which is why, again, Douglas Murray is one of the people I called out for being an atheistic conservative. This is why being an atheistic conservative is pointless, because it exposes the expert class for what they are. They're just shills and slaves to their own intellect. They have nothing to offer outside of their own quote-unquote intelligence, which, to Jason's point, being debased from a higher morality, i.e. killing kids is wrong, i.e. attacking the moderator of the debate to start out a debate is wrong. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you don't have the morality and piece intact, if you're only defending your position and not a higher authority of some way, you're going to descend into elitism, into condescension, which is the whole crux of what all of this is built on. These are all the quote-unquote smart people, the expert class, quote-unquote. And Dave had a great point in terms of, Douglas said, he's like, you get more experts in the room. And he's like, well, the experts told me to get 17 vaccines for COVID. And he's like, I know that the experts are not all this, but you need more experts for this scenario. And he's like, well, the foreign policy experts are the reason we like bombed Iraq. And he's like, well, that's not the same thing. And it's like, okay. And so again, it was this circular, ridiculous. It was so like, honestly, it got infuriating to listen to after a while, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going nowhere. It's pointless, whatever. And so intelligence debased from morality is stupid. Intelligence debased from morality is not intelligence at all, because it's not wisdom. Wisdom should be valued at a higher point than intelligence, which is why all of the experts, all of the nerds like Douglas Murray, and all the elitists out there are falling out of taste and out of favor across all realms of intellect.